Today, what I'm about to tell you might be uncomfortable, but it's crucial. Have you ever sacrificed your own needs, dreams, or even friendships just to keep someone close? What you might call intense love or a deep connection could actually be the very thing silently wrecking your life. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds of the human psyche, exposed the dark truth behind emotional dependency. In this video, we'll unpack how it operates and why it's so destructive. If you've ever felt lost without someone, this video is for you. Emotional dependency has nothing to do with love. It's about fear. It's about losing control. And it happens the moment you start building your emotional safety around someone else. You stop being centered in yourself and start orbiting around them. You wait for their replies like they decide your worth. You measure their mood before speaking. You offer more than you truly want to, just to avoid being left behind. And deep down, you know it's not generosity. It's self-protection. You're not giving, you're bargaining. If I stay useful, maybe I'll stay loved. You've done it before. You've disappeared to stay close. You've quieted your needs to avoid tension. You've stretched yourself just to feel chosen. And every time you do, you trade a piece of your truth for a moment of connection. Carl Jung understood this pattern well. He taught that when you haven't made peace with your inner world, you'll search for someone to complete it. Not because they complete you, but because you've lost contact with the parts of yourself you were meant to carry. Dependency fills that gap. You become reactive. You wait for signs. You feel secure only when they show up a certain way. And when they don't, your entire balance crumbles. Not because they changed, but because you built your stability on something that was never yours to control. You stop protecting your boundaries. You adapt to keep the peace. You think you're being loving, but really, you're avoiding abandonment. That's not love. That's fear dressed up as devotion. Jung warned, when you make someone your emotional anchor, you give them the power to sink you. And that's exactly what happens. You hand them your peace, your self-worth, your identity, all without realizing how much of yourself you've sacrificed just to not feel alone. Maybe you learned this early, where love came with conditions, where attention had to be earned. But now you have a choice. You can keep repeating the pattern, or you can start asking different questions. Not, how do I keep them close? But, why am I so afraid of losing them? You don't heal dependency by receiving more. You heal it by reclaiming what you've been handing away. Piece by piece, you come back to yourself. And remember that you were never meant to be kept. You were meant to be free. It's easy to think you're in love. But what's really happening is something much harder to admit. You're attached. And there's a big difference. Love is a choice. Attachment is a reaction. Love respects freedom. Attachment clings. Love allows you to be yourself. Attachment makes you change, shrink, perform, just to stay close. This is how emotional dependency starts to destroy you. Quietly, slowly, it replaces real connection with need. You stop showing up as yourself and start showing up as whoever you think they'll stay for. You give more than you want to. You accept less than you deserve. And somewhere along the way, you lose sight of what love even feels like. Because all you feel is fear. Carl Jung exposed this dynamic with precision. He believed that most of what we call love is actually projection. You don't fall in love with the person in front of you. You fall in love with what they awaken in you. The attention they give you. The version of yourself that feels wanted, valuable, finally enough. You don't love them. You love the relief they bring from your own emptiness. That's what makes attachment so confusing. It looks like care. It feels intense, but it's not rooted in stability. It's rooted in lack. And when your bond with someone is based on what they fix in you, not who they are, you're not building love. You're building dependency. You start seeing them as the answer, the one who saves you from loneliness, quiets your self-doubt, gives you a sense of purpose. But that's not their role. No one can hold your whole world together for you. And when you make someone that important, they don't just carry your heart, they carry your identity. That weight becomes unbearable for them and for you. You begin to tolerate things that hurt. You make excuses. You stay longer than you should. Because walking away wouldn't just mean losing the relationship, it would mean losing the person you think keeps you whole. But the truth is, if someone has that much power over your peace, it's not love you're fighting for. It's your sense of self. This is where it starts to fall apart. You cling tighter. They pull back. The more they create space, the more desperate you feel. And the more desperate you feel, the more you abandon yourself to try and fix it. It becomes a cycle. You chase, you adapt, you lose. Not because they're taking anything from you, but because you keep giving everything away. Jung knew that healing this didn't start with the other person. It started with you. With recognizing that love doesn't hurt like this. That needing someone to feel okay isn't love. It's emotional survival dressed up as romance. And if you're not careful, it will hollow you out. You don't love them. You've attached to what they represent: safety, validation, escape. But anything built on fear can't survive. So the question now isn't, do they love me? It's, what am I afraid will happen if they don't? Trying to hold on to someone by becoming easier, quieter, more agreeable, it always comes at a price. What begins as small changes to avoid conflict turns into something bigger. A version of you that doesn't feel real anymore. Little by little, the things that used to matter to you start fading. You stop asking for what you want. You stop saying what bothers you. Not because it stopped bothering you, but because keeping the peace feels safer than being honest. Over time, you become careful with every word. You don't speak your mind the way you used to. You wait to see their reaction before deciding if something is okay. You tell yourself it's just temporary, that things will level out, but deep down something feels off. You begin to notice how often you second-guess yourself. Even small things feel loaded. Should you bring it up? Should you let it go? Will this be the thing that makes them pull away? You carry those questions silently, trying to manage the relationship without making a mess. What you're really doing is managing their comfort while ignoring your own. And each time you do, a piece of your confidence gets chipped away. You still show up. You still smile. But you don't feel like yourself anymore. You feel like someone performing a role. The hardest part is pretending everything is fine. You tell people you're okay. You act like the connection is strong. But when you're alone, there's a quiet sense that you're disappearing. Not because anyone forced you to, but because you started believing that being chosen was more important than being yourself. You become the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who's always calm, always reasonable, always willing to understand. And the more you play that role, the less space you leave for your own truth. You don't speak from your heart. You filter everything through fear. You're not trying to manipulate. You're trying to protect what feels fragile. But in doing that, you sacrifice your own voice. You give up your reactions. You stop saying, "This matters to me." Because you're scared that what matters to you might push them away. Some days you look in the mirror and don't recognize who you've become. The spark feels dull. Your energy feels low. And even when you get what you wanted, attention, a reply, a moment of closeness, it doesn't feel satisfying. Because the cost was too high. What was once about love has turned into effort, constant effort to be accepted, to not mess it up, to be enough. But the harder you work to keep the connection alive, the more disconnected you feel from yourself. Losing yourself doesn't look dramatic. Sometimes it just feels like not knowing what you actually think anymore. Like being surrounded, but still feeling alone. Like staying somewhere that empties you, just so you don't have to feel rejected. After a while, It's not just about the person in front of you, it's about what they represent. When you've already spent so much time molding yourself to be accepted, the idea of losing that person starts to feel like losing the only thing holding you together. It's not really about them. It's about the role they've come to play. The one who sees you, the one who soothes you, the one who makes you feel like you finally matter. Even if they're not giving much anymore, you hold on to the version of them you created in your mind. Some people become mirrors, not because they reflect who you are, but because they reflect what you've been craving. You look at them and see peace, comfort, safety, and it feels easier to believe in that image than to face the parts of yourself that still feel incomplete. Carl Jung described this as projection. You place your unmet needs onto someone else without realizing it. The love you didn't receive, the validation you've been missing, the sense of being whole, it all gets placed on their shoulders. Suddenly they become your lifeline. You stop seeing their actions for what they are. You explain away the distance. You ignore the red flags. You stay attached to the moments that made you feel alive, even if those moments were rare. It's not the present that keeps you holding on. It's the memory of how they once made you feel. There's comfort in believing they understand you, that they have something special, something no one else does. But often, what feels like deep connection is just your own reflection, your hope, your longing, your story. You aren't seeing them. You're seeing what you've been missing in yourself. What makes this more complicated is that projection doesn't feel false. It feels real. You're emotionally invested. You've built meaning into every interaction. You've turned them into a symbol, and that symbol becomes harder to release than the person themselves. Jung warned that if you don't explore your inner world, it will play out in your relationships. And you'll call it fate. You'll think this person was sent to heal you, to complete you, to fix what's broken. But they weren't. They were just standing where your attention landed. Letting go of projection feels like loss. But you're not losing someone who truly knew you. You're letting go of the illusion that they were ever meant to save you. That weight was never theirs to carry. It was yours to reclaim. When the image you built around someone starts to crack, it's not just disappointment you feel. It's fear. Because letting go of the version of them that felt like safety forces you to look at what's been hiding underneath. That's when the real discomfort shows up. The shadow of dependency is made of the parts of yourself you've been trying to avoid. The fear of not being wanted. The belief that you're too much or not enough. The memory of being ignored when you needed closeness most. These aren't just thoughts. They sit in your body, and they shape the way you relate to others. Sometimes it shows up in the silence after an unanswered message. Your stomach tightens, your chest gets heavy, your mind starts racing, not because of what they did, but because of what it touches in you. Old stories, deep wounds, moments you've never fully faced. Other times, it looks like giving more than you have. You say yes when you're tired. You stay available even when you're hurting. You give and give, hoping that one day it'll finally feel like enough. But the truth is that hunger doesn't go away just because someone stays. There's a part of you that learned early on that love had to be earned. That being loved meant proving your value, showing your worth, staying quiet to be accepted. And even now you keep repeating those patterns, hoping for a different result. But the result never changes. Dependency doesn't only drain your energy, it also distorts your perception. You start believing that their attention is a reward, and their distance is your fault. You take responsibility for every silence, every mood, every shift in the connection. You internalize what was never yours to carry. This is where resentment starts to grow, not always towards them, but towards yourself. For bending too much, for staying too long, for giving up pieces of yourself just to keep something alive. You feel the weight of it, but you're scared to stop. Because stopping means being alone with everything you've been running from. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow as the part of ourselves we reject or deny. In Dependency, that shadow gets loud. It whispers things like, "You're hard to love," or "You're only safe when needed." And even when you know it's not true, a part of you still believes it. Facing the shadow of dependency means sitting with the parts of yourself that feel unworthy, unlovable, or forgotten. It means looking at where the need comes from, not to blame yourself, but to understand why this pattern has been so hard to break. Recognizing the shadow doesn't mean you know what to do with it. You see the fear, the beliefs, the weight you've been carrying, but awareness alone doesn't set you free. Something deeper is needed. Something that reconnects you to the parts of yourself you abandoned just to be accepted. That's where individuation comes in. Carl Jung described it as the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not fixed, just real. It's not about removing your dependency overnight, but about understanding why it formed and slowly choosing not to let it define you. The path out isn't about fighting your need for love. It's about finding the parts of you that were never loved properly and bringing them back home. That means looking at where the fear started. The moment you began to believe that your value depended on being chosen. The moment you made someone else the center of your peace. Letting go of emotional dependency starts by noticing how much energy you spend trying to be enough. You bend, you adapt, you stay quiet. Not because it feels right, but because it feels safer than being honest. But every time you do that, you reinforce the belief that your truth is a threat. There comes a point when the pain of staying disconnected from yourself becomes louder than the fear of being alone. That's where something shifts. You begin asking different questions. Not how do I keep them, but why do I keep leaving myself behind? Individuation means turning inward instead of reaching outward for rescue. It's choosing to stop blaming them for not healing you and starting to give yourself what you've been asking others to provide. That safety you keep chasing? It comes from learning how to be with your own discomfort without needing someone else to fix it. Sometimes that looks like setting a boundary, even if your voice shakes. Other times it means not sending that message, not chasing clarity, not begging for reassurance. You give yourself room to feel what comes up without running from it or handing it to someone else to soothe. The process isn't clean. It's messy, uncomfortable, and full of moments where you'll want to go back to what's familiar. But the more you stay present with yourself, the less power those old patterns have over you. You start to realize that your worth was never tied to someone else's approval. It was buried under your need for it. Jung believed that individuation wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you were before fear took over. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not impossible to love. But you do have to stop waiting for someone else to prove that to you. Healing begins when you stop asking others to carry your pain and start walking with it yourself, not to suffer, but to understand. And from that understanding, to rebuild. Sometimes when you've given too much of yourself for too long, solitude feels like the only safe place left. No one to read, no one to please, no one to lose yourself in. Just silence and space to breathe. But freedom isn't found in isolation. It's found in integration, in learning how to stay present with others without vanishing, in remembering that protecting your peace doesn't mean shutting people out. It means staying close to yourself even when someone else is close to you. You don't need to disappear to be loved. You don't need to shrink to keep something. The version of you that bends, hides, and waits, she's tired. And she's not the one who needs fixing. She needs to be listened to. Letting people in again doesn't mean going back to old patterns. It means showing up differently. It means staying whole. Saying what you feel without fear of being too much. Taking up space without guilt. Letting love meet you. Not the performance, not the mask, but the real you. There's no need to choose between connection and self-respect. You're allowed to have both. You're allowed to love without losing your voice. You're allowed to be soft without being small, strong without shutting down, present without becoming invisible. Carl Jung taught that healing is about becoming whole, not perfect, that the parts of you you've tried to hide are the very pieces you need to welcome home. Integration is that homecoming. It's where you stop needing to be rescued and start standing with yourself fully. This is how you begin to feel safe again. Not by building walls, but by building roots. By knowing who you are so deeply that you stop handing that power to anyone else. By no longer making connection something you earn, but something you share. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove, you just need to come back. To the part of you that always knew you were never too much. You just got used to being too quiet. If this spoke to you, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you feel like giving something back, a super thanks is always appreciated. And thank you for watching.